My name is Jessica Buchanan, and I am a teacher. I'm an author, New York Times bestselling author, publisher, and a survivor. I think most notably, most people know me as a kidnapping survivor. So I grew up in the Midwest, grew up in church. I always say I'm a school teacher who grew up in the middle of a cornfield in Ohio, and that is essentially very true. And people always want to know, how does a school teacher who grew up in the middle of a cornfield in Ohio end up working in a place like Somalia, which is a very, a fair question. I don't think I even knew that Somalia was a country growing up, but I did know about Africa at large. And I think too, like growing up in the church, there was this ideology or this a truth that was instilled in me, that to whom much is given, much is required. And so I really was raised with the belief that I've been given a lot, right? And I didn't grow up with means, very, middle class, lower middle class a lifestyle, but it was still like, you've been given an education, you have two legs that work, you're healthy, you're strong, you should serve, you should go out and do something to make the world a better place. At least that's how I internalize the message. And so I had I like to say I took the scenic route. Mm-hmm. After high school, went to college a bunch of times, finally settled in at a university, a very small university outside of Philadelphia, and pursued a teaching degree. And my first summer in between my freshman and sophomore year there, I got a teaching position in Honduras. And I taught all summer just in this little village. And it was like, oh, yes, this is what I was made for. This is what I'm supposed to do with my life. And so then 2 summers later, I went on a very poorly planned service trip with just me and another woman to South Sudan. That was crazy. We almost died. We were in a village that got taken over by the LRA, the Lord's Resistance Army, which was a militia group. Yeah. And that would like if you're familiar with child soldiers and in northern Uganda, that was like the whole thing. And we were supposed to be working in an orphanage that was rehabilitating child soldiers. The whole thing fell apart and we had to be evacuated. And it's weird. Maybe it's just because I'm like addicted to drama and chaos, but I was like, oh yes, this is like what I'm supposed to do with my life. This is where I want to be. This is how I want to serve. And so it had to take a more formalized approach because I also needed a job, but I got a student teaching position in Nairobi, Kenya at an international school called the Roslyn Academy to finish up my degree. I was the first education student at my school who pursued an overseas student teaching position, and they didn't really know what to do, but I was like, I really, really want to do this. There has to be a way. So we figured it out. I spent 4 months in Nairobi teaching, and they offered me a job at the end of that, and I very happily took it. I was super excited to start my life. And even though I was teaching in like a more privileged environment than I saw myself working in, it still kept me in Africa, right? And so I tutored in the slums. Like if you know anything about Nairobi, it's a huge city. It's very metropolitan, but there is still just tremendous poverty. And they have one of the biggest slums in the world, Kibera. And so, over 1 million people live there, and I worked with a couple different organizations and would tutor there on the weekends and do other kinds of work. And so, I was just, for me, like living my best life. Yeah. I'm young, I'm doing work that feels meaningful. I've got fun friends. I'm living in this exotic place. And then about 2 months into my teaching contract, I'm like at some trashy nightclub one night, Saturday night, blowing off steam with some teacher friends. And I see this cute guy across the dance floor, and I'm actually in a, you're a young woman. Like, I don't know if you go out anymore? Do people do that anymore? Maybe it's just me.
They do, yeah.
Okay. I feel like the younger generations are so healthy and don't do stuff like that anymore. But I remember dancing with this guy, and he was getting a little too familiar, and I felt like I needed some help. Because I couldn't extrapolate myself from the situation. I wasn't freaked out, but I was like looking around for somebody to help me, and I made eye contact with this guy. And I waved him over, and he looked at me and just kind of laughed and went back to his phone. And I thought, no, I don't think so. Like, that's not how this is going to go. And he looks up again, and I waved him over, and he came over. I thought he said his name was Oric. He was from Sweden. And I'd never met anybody from Sweden before, so that seemed likely. And turns out his name is Eric, and we've been married now for 18 years. So
wow,
he came over and saved me. He also turned out to be a really terrible dancer, and so I was like, maybe we should just like go have a drink or something and talk. And we've been talking, for a really long time. So he's really how I ended up in Somalia. He was based in Nairobi, but his expertise was working with Somali governments. And so he actually, we got married a year and a half after that Saturday night. And he switched organizations and he was based in Hargeisa, Somaliland, which is like, if you look at Somalia on a map, it kind of looks like a 7. And so the Horn of Africa is actually right at the top corner of that 7. He was being based up in Hargeisa, Somaliland. And Somalia is divided into three parts, I guess you would say. The only one that's really recognized internationally is the southern part, which is where Mogadishu is. And if you ever hear of anything happening in Somalia, it's usually because something bad has happened in Mogadishu. But we were up in the north in Hargeisa, where most of the NGOs, the international and non-governmental organizations, were based. And I didn't want to have a long distance marriage. He didn't either. He was only coming back every 3 weeks or something. And that didn't feel like a great way to start a marriage. So I quit my teaching job and moved up to Somalia with him, to Somaliland, because, I figured I'm up for the adventure. There are people in need everywhere. Teachers always land on their feet. And so, that's really what happened. I moved up to Hargeisa. We got married in 2009. I moved up to Hargeisa that summer. And before I knew it, I had Ethiopian refugees that were working on the compound we were living on, coming in after work to learn English. And, there were some kids on the compound. I'm always like, kids and animals, like, connect with them.
Yeah.
And we started a permaculture farm on the compound. And so it was just like lots of cool stuff going on. And then word got out that there was a teacher in town, like a real teacher, right? Who actually had like a degree and everything. And so I was approached by the Ministry of Education for Somaliland to help them develop curriculum. And then that turned into a job working for the Danish Demining Group, which was an NGO that was the mine action unit of the Danish Refugee Council. So if anybody listening's ever heard of like Save the Children or, any of these big international nonprofits, essentially, that's what it was. But it was based out of Denmark and funded primarily by the Danish government. And so they needed help with their education around community safety, armed violence reduction, mine risk education. A lot of the communities that they worked in where they were doing mine clearance. So a lot of these communities were maybe 5, 10, 15 years post-Civil War. And so there were still explosives left laying around their communities, especially on the outskirts. And so it virtually made those parts of the communities uninhabitable, or they couldn't move through them easily. And kids would go out there and see something shiny and they would pick it up and it would explode on them. It could blow their arms off or blind them or kill them. So, the threats were pretty serious. Not to mention, in these communities where people are nomadic, they're like herding goats or camels. If they can't get their livestock across certain parts of for grazing, then that's going to really impact like their overall like quality of life. So the we had lots of mandates, but my job primarily was to ensure that the messages, like we had, caution messages and safety messages for kids, especially, that they understood them. So, working with local authors and illustrators to create artwork and messaging, and a lot of these people groups are nomadic, so they're not literate, and they have low literacy. And so it was just like, I didn't even know a job like that existed. And as a teacher, like I'm once a teacher, always a teacher. Like I'll always have a heart for teaching. I was just like, it makes me tear up thinking about it, because I just loved every minute of it. It felt like we were doing something that mattered to people. And I felt like I was helping, and that's really what I wanted to do. That's really why I was there. I did that for about 2.5 years. It ended up that I became the regional education advisor for the company. And so I was working in South Sudan again. So that felt awesome. And then going into northern Uganda. And some of these places I went into, like, I don't even know if they'd ever seen a white person before. It was that, we're talking like primitive and very outlying areas. And just from an experience perspective, it was just like, I don't get a lot of chances to talk about that, because people always want to hear about the other stuff, but just like, I think sometimes how lucky I am that I got to experience that and to witness those parts of the world and how other people live and function. And it's just incredible. And I feel so lucky for that. And then 2011 rolled around, October 2011. And part of my portfolio included Southern Somalia. And I hadn't gone down there to do my job yet. I'd brought their staff up to Hargeisa, where I was based, because it was safer.
Yeah.
And but the time came up that I needed to get down there and do a staff training, because that was part of my responsibility. My counterpart at the time was a Danish guy, a friend of mine. His name was Paul. He was like 30 years older than me. He'd been in development work and humanitarian aid work his entire career. So, he'd seen everything. And we would hang out every time he came up to Hargeisa. So we were pretty good friends. And he had asked me to come down and do a training for his staff. And I had to. It was my job. But I'd actually canceled the training twice because I didn't feel good about it. I had this gut feeling.
Yeah.
At the time, I thought I was just being paranoid, and I felt afraid. And I think a lot of times it's hard for people to discern what's intrusive and what's intuition.
Yeah.
At least it was for me. And so I called him up a couple of days before I was supposed to go down to do this training. And I said, I don't feel good about it. I didn't say I was scared, but I just said, I don't feel good about this. Can we do something? Can we bring them up? I'll pay for it out of my budget, whatever. And he basically, I'm not quoting him verbatim, but the message was, look, this is the third time we've scheduled this. My team's expecting you. This is your job. Get down here and do it, or I'm going to report you to your supervisor and we'll find somebody else who will. And I got off the phone knowing that he was right.
Yeah.
And also feeling like I was right. And, I talked to my husband, who's been working in the region for many years. And it was kind of like, well, there's always a risk. There's an inherent risk involved, because this is Somalia. This is third world. But what are the chances, right, that something's going to happen? You're just going down for a couple of days. you know, he was like, what did your security advisor say? And I went through the protocols. They said, yep, you're fine. You're good to go. The security alerts were low coming from the UN, which was our, you know, like our designated, like that's where we got our security information.
And you weren't going long term. It was just
no, I was just going for like 2 nights, 3 nights. Was it? I think it was 2 nights and 3 days.
Which is honestly like even more interesting that you had that gut feeling about it. You know what I mean? Because I feel like too, if it was something where it was going to be long term, I feel like in that sense you could kind of be like, am I just overthinking it? But the fact that it was going to be something that was shorter, you would think it would just go over your head like, okay, go quickly, come back.
Right. Just get it done.
Right.
This is my job. I mean, I had gone on field missions that were much longer in much more remote parts of Africa that I didn't have this feeling about. You know, and probably some pretty shady situations too, where I'm like on compounds alone for weeks at a time, where I don't see anybody but, you know, staff who go away at night. And I spent an entire week alone on a compound in the middle of South Sudan, which should have never happened, and I was fine. So I just thought, you know, like something is going on with me, you know, I'm being paranoid. I'd also like, I was in a weird emotional space. My mom had passed away the year before. And so I was still really struggling, you know, with my grief. And so I just thought, I'm just being oversensitive. And at the same time, also like, I love my job. Like, I don't want to do anything to jeopardize it. I was working in a very heavily male dominated environment. A lot of these guys were like, you know, past military. They were very tough because we're working at mine action. And you got me, this like American who's like super creative teacher, like all in my feelings all the time. And I was not their favorite person. Let's just say that. But I did a good job at what I was assigned to do. So, you know, I think we do this all the time. I was just like, what's the worst thing that can happen? Right? I'm a school teacher from Ohio. Like, I'm just get on that plane, get the job done, pull up your big girl panties, and it'll be fine. So I'll never forget walking into the guest house. So Galkayo at the time was divided into 2 parts. And there was what they call a green line that divided the 2 parts of the city, because it was essentially governed by opposing clans. And there was a lot of clan conflict over resources, right? Like water, land boundaries, camels, that kind of thing. So we had staff in guest house and office on the north side, and the staff that worked on the north side could not cross over into the south because they belonged to different clans. So we were the ones who had to cross over, and we had separate guest house and office and staff in the south. So when I remember like being picked up from the airport and then walking into the guest house, and Paul says to me, don't go out on the veranda. It was like on the second floor of this big house, this big like cement house. Don't go sit on the veranda, because see that house over there? And there was a house way off in the distance. He's like, apparently it's a pirate den. And when they like, I don't know, I guess get money or whatever, they shoot their guns off to celebrate, and bullets come whizzing past here. And I looked out, and there were like bullet holes on the veranda railings. And I looked at him and I was like, I kind of feel like I should have known before I came down here that there are like known pirates like on the perimeter of our compound. Like, what the heck? Right. First of all, right? Like, what the heck is this? And like, why wouldn't you tell me this? Why did I not know this?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to store that information away, stay off the veranda, but you know, just let it go. Like, I'm already here. What am I going to do now? So we go like the next day, we have our staff training. Everything goes great. We do a second day of training. And then that night, Paul had turned 60. And so we had this like big dinner, and just he and I to celebrate his birthday. And we stayed up really late because we both like music. And so we were like watching all these concerts and stuff. And we drank like way too much wine, and I went to bed and I didn't sleep at all. I just had nightmares all night long. Like, and I'm not a person who like dreams prolifically. but these were very clear. And I remember them to this day. My door was being, in my dream, my door was being pounded down, and I knew that it was pirates who had scaled the walls of the compound and they were coming to take us. And I woke up like with a start, in Muslim countries, the call to prayer will wake you up at daybreak. So it was like 5:30 in the morning, and I can hear the call to prayer, and I'm like sweating. And I'm thinking, like, what the heck was that? Like, what was that about? And I go into the bathroom, and I distinctly remember looking at myself in the mirror, saying out loud to myself, Jess, do you want to do this? And all I could think was like, am I going to go down there and say to Paul, I'm not leaving the compound because I had these nightmares that we're going to be kidnapped by pirates? Because that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, I can't go down there and say that. What am I going to say? Like, everybody's waiting for me. Everything's been arranged. Like, what is wrong with, like, that's what I kept thinking. Like, what's wrong with me? Like, why can't you get over this?
Right. Because you have this feeling inside, but speaking it out, you're like, they're going to think I'm nuts.
Stupid.
Yeah.
Like, I'm crazy. What is going on with me? And so I just ignore it again. And I get ready, put my headscarf on, and I walk out that door of my bedroom, and I literally walked into a different life. We get across the green line, which I'm like so relieved, because we had to go in a convoy of vehicles that we had armed guards. But I knew from trainings that I'd taken that you're most vulnerable when you're in transit. So we had gotten across the green line and gotten into a separate convoy of vehicles that were going to take us to the South office without a hitch. So I'm like, okay, seriously, I'm just being paranoid. Go to the South office. We do the training. Everything goes great. I'm hearing some gunshots, but in that part of the world, like, you're used to hearing gunshots. So nothing to worry about. We have lunch. I remember, like, not really eating much because I wasn't really into like goat and rice at the time. Mm-hmm. So I was like, I'll eat when I get back to the guest house. And it's around 3:00 in the afternoon, and we're waiting for the convoy of vehicles to pick us up, 3 Land Cruisers to take us back over the green line so we can, and I'm like almost home free, right? Yeah. I'm just like, literally, like, I'm crazy.
Would
like,
that have
what
been
is
your
going
last
on?
day of the
That
training?
was my last day of training. I'm going back to the guest house.
And then you were going to fly out the next
morning.
Okay.
At like 6 a.m. I'm going to go back to the guest house. I'm going to work out. I'm going to have dinner. I'm going to have an early night. And then I'm headed back to Hargeisa. I think we had a vacation planned like the next couple of weeks. I'm thinking about that. I'm just like, not really even like thinking too much about it, other than like, you were just being so paranoid. Like, what is your deal? I'll examine that with my therapist later or something, is what I'm thinking. And so we have a Somali guy, his name's Abdurizak, who's the security advisor for Galkayo. And so, which is standard. You always have like a local security advisor, because they're, they know what's going on in town, and they're supposed to have information, and their whole point is to keep the staff safe. So he's the one organizing the transport, and he's saying, okay, it's time to go. Wait, no, it's not. They're not ready. And we're kind of like going back and forth. Oh, are we ready? Are we not? This goes on for like a half an hour, and it's getting annoying, right? Finally, the Land Cruisers come in. There are armed guards in the front vehicle, armed guards in the third vehicle, and then Paul and I are supposed to get into the middle, which we do, and Abdurizak gets in next to me. And the convoy moves through the gates out onto the street, and it starts moving through Galkayo, and it's, it's not like it's not a village, but it's not really a city either. It's like it's a town, but the streets are, pretty crowded. You got people walking around, you got goats, dogs running around, kids running around, that kind of thing. So you're not moving very quickly. And then maybe, I'm on my phone. I think I sent my husband a text message. He was in another part of the country doing a training for his organization. And I'm thinking about what I'm going to have for dinner, just like normal things that you think about when you get off work, right? And then suddenly a vehicle like a Land Cruiser comes up on the right side of us and cuts us off so we can't proceed. And it had been raining. Hi. And splashes mud up all over the windows and the windshield. And so we can't see out of the car anymore. And I'm like, I remember looking up from my phone and saying to the car, Paul's in the front, he's on the left, which is where the passenger side is because the steering wheel's on the right side there. And I say, what a jerk. Who drives like that? You know? And the driver's kind of like looking around, and I'm not really noticing anything because all of a sudden I hear the crack of the butt of an AK-47 on the car hood, and we're being surrounded, and there are it sounds like a lot of angry men surrounding the vehicle, and it sounds like they're coming closer and closer. And then Abdurazak, who's sitting on my right side, the security advisor, he's kind of looking around, and then his door is pulled open, and there's a very angry man dressed in a police uniform with an AK-47 standing there, and he's screaming at him in Somali, and I'm not really sure, what he's saying. And I just remember him pulling Abdurazak out. He had his seatbelt on, and I don't know why I remember this, but he pulls him out of the seatbelt, which I've never seen anybody do before, and slams him onto the ground and hits him in the head with the butt of his AK. And I feel really sorry for him because I think, oh my God, that must really hurt. And then he climbs into where Abdurazak was sitting, and he puts the tip of his AK to my head. And then he starts screaming at the driver to drive. And he's just screaming in English over and over again, drive, 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 drive. He just takes off through the city, through the town. And I mean, he's driving so fast, and these roads they're not smooth. They're rocky, they're unstable, but he's like up on two wheels, and he's slamming back down, and he's up on two wheels. And at one point it feels like the whole vehicle is going to flip, and Paul's in the front, he's in the passenger side, and he's begging the driver, slow down, you're going to kill us, you're going to flip this car over. He's screaming at him in English. And the driver's just crazed. He's like, it's like he's on drugs or something. And he just picks up the pace. I don't know. We must be going like 80, 90 miles an hour, and we're heading out of the city. And now we're like out in the desert on the outskirts of the city. And we're not even on real roads. We're just on like camel tracks, which are like, if you've ever been like on horseback riding, like a horse trail, that's like what we're driving on. And we're hitting rocks and going so fast. And I'm just thinking like, I don't know what this is. Like, I don't know what's happening right now.
Now the driver, was that still the original driver that you guys had? Mm-hmm. Was he in on it with these people?
I would come to find out. Yes.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah. Like information will unfold as time goes on. But at this point I have no clue what is happening. I'm hoping maybe we're being carjacked, because carjackings happen in that part of the world. Mm-hmm. I've never been a part of one, but I hear about them all the time, right? The car will get taken over. In the city, like in Nairobi, they'll drive you to an ATM so that you can empty out your cash, or they'll take your purse and everything, and maybe they'll take your car and then kick you out, and you have to go figure out, you have to walk back to town or whatever. So that's like what I'm thinking is like, oh God, please. I'm like praying, like, please let us just be getting carjacked, you know? And then I just have like it's like my mind is stuck on a loop, and it's just like thinking two things that are super basic and don't really make much sense, other than like, all I keep thinking is like, this is bad. This is bad. This is bad. This is so bad. This is so bad. Like, I can't think like, I don't have any frame of reference for what's happening. I don't have any information to reach for. Like, you know, if you're your house catches on fire, hopefully you know that you need to drop to the ground, right? Like there are procedures or things that you know to do, right? That will help keep you safe. And I don't know. I don't have any procedures or anything to reach for, or any information that's going to help me stay safe and alive in this situation, because I don't know what the situation is, first of all. And secondly, this is so far outside of the realm of like my reality and possibility that I don't know what to do. And then the second thing I keep thinking is like, this is going to change my life forever. Whatever this is, whatever happens, however it turns out, like even if they just stopped and let us walk back to town, like something fundamentally has shifted in the way I am going to experience the world as this person in this body. And so I'm thinking like I struggled with anxiety anyway. And so I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to have a panic attack right here, right now. I think I'm just going to have a panic attack in the back of this car, because I don't know what's happening. I don't know who these guys are. There's also, he must have climbed in the back of the vehicle like when the car was taken over. But in my memory, there's this very strange little man in the back. And he's going through my stuff. Like I had my work bag, like a pretty big work bag in the back, and it had like my wallet and my work computer and materials. And he's like going through everything and throwing it around. And it was like, if I had like music to describe what was happening, it's like that circus music. You know what I mean? Like something crazy is happening here. And this guy is like laughing and his teeth are all rotten out. And he's like throwing things around and he's going through all my personal stuff. It was so weird. It was so weird that sometimes I'm like, did I make that up? Like, did I imagine that? I didn't. He was actually there, but it was just super strange. And so, we drive for hours deep into the desert, places I've never been. And we stop so many times. Sometimes we have to get into a separate set of vehicles. Other times they split Paul and I up. At one point I remember him turning around and looking at me, I think probably to check on me. And I just like whisper to him, what's happening right now? And I'll never forget that he just looked at me with so much pity, because I hadn't really quite figured out what was happening yet. And he just said simply, we're being kidnapped. And then I thought, oh my God, like I'm going to have a panic attack right here. I'm going to start hyperventilating. Like what the hell is this? And, we just kept it, just like we would drive for a while and then we would stop and different people would get in. It was like just all this commotion and all this chaos constantly. At one point we are driving and it's gotten really dark by now, and I can hear this high-pitched voice behind my head. I'm sitting in the back, which is like a bench seat, and then there's the cargo part. And I think, oh my God, this is so weird. There's a woman involved. Like that would be very strange. And finally, my curiosity gets the best of me. I just have to know where this voice is coming from. And I turn around and it's a small child. And he is wearing like chains of ammunition. And he's holding an AK-47 and it's like bigger than he is. And he looks like he's about 9 years old. I mean, he's tiny. And I would later come to find out his name is Abdullahi. He was 12. He was just really small for his age. He was learning the family business of kidnapping and ransom. And he'd already killed 3 people. I would later be like terrorized by him constantly because he was like drunk with power over this like, this lady. And we came up with nicknames for everyone so we could talk about them, and they wouldn't hear us, but we called him Crack Baby because he was just like 2 black holes for eyes, like so traumatized, right? Like not even a chance to have any kind of life, right? Yeah. And that scared me, and it made me feel a lot of despair, because like how is that possible, right? How can that be the reality for kids? And it truly is all over the world.
Yeah.
So we drove for hours, and we stopped Eventually, it's the middle of the night. I don't know where we are. I don't know what they're going to do with us. By now, there's a man with a turban on his head, and he has a machine gun, and it's so big it doesn't fit in the vehicle anymore. So he's hanging out the window of the Land Cruiser with this machine gun. And we stop, and he pushes me out of the car, and he starts screaming at me to walk. And I think it's just like just terror and this like primal survival instinct or something comes over me, and I refuse. I'm like, no, I'm not walking out there, because I'm like looking out at this darkness, right? And I'm thinking they're going to take me out here and they're going to gang rape me and they're going to kill me. And we get into the kind of an altercation where he keeps screaming at me to walk, and I keep refusing. Because I think I'm kind of thinking, like, if you're going to shoot me, you can just do it right here. And Paul comes around the corner of the vehicle, and he takes my hand, and he just says, Jessica, we have to walk. Like, we don't have a choice. And so we do. We start walking into the desert, and it's so dark. There's no stars. There's no ambient light from a town or anything. It's just pitch black. Can't see. Like tripping over rocks and getting stuck in thorn bushes, falling, and I'm trying to prepare myself for what lies ahead. I think in that moment, it is the most terrifying moment of my life so far. I can't really prepare myself because I don't know what is going to happen to me. But I feel pretty confident it's not going to be good. I'm scared that I'm going to die. I'm saying goodbye basically to Eric. I'm saying goodbye to my dad. I'm like also having these thoughts of like, it's so short-sighted, I guess, but also like, what did I do to deserve this? Like, what did I do so wrong for this to be the outcome, like this to be the end of my life? How did I get it so wrong? My mom, again, I think emotionally and mentally and spiritually reach out to her, because I am very sure that I'm going to die. And so, I'm thinking, I'm asking for help. Like, please, somehow, I don't know how I'm phrasing it, but like, receive me. Please help me, be with me. I'm so scared in this moment. I don't know how long we walk. It's 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes. I don't know if it's like a very long time, but it could have been 5, who knows? And as we're walking, we're being surrounded by more and more men. They're just like coming out of the shadows. They're wearing chains of, they're just covered in ammunition. It's like they're a militia, like they're going to war. So many weapons. And I'm used to being around weapons, but I've never seen this many. And it does not seem like it's going to be survivable.
Yeah.
And then they order us to stop and get down on our knees. And I don't know why, but all I keep thinking is like, I'm 31 and I wish I hadn't put off having kids. Like, I wish I'd had the chance to experience motherhood. And this, like, I'm going to die out here essentially alone. And then one of them just says, sleep. And I'm on my knees. I'm waiting for whatever's going to happen. Like, I think everybody, maybe not, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm like totally gruesome. Everybody kind of wonders how they're going to die. Right. Yeah. And you're like in this moment where you're like, oh, this is how it's going to happen. Is it going to hurt? Like, how long is it going to last? Like, I'm trying to process. And then all of a sudden someone says sleep. And I'm thinking, I don't really know. My brain can't comprehend that.
I don't think our brains are meant to comprehend any of this. It's just trauma.
Yes.
The whole thing.
100%.
In the midst of it.
Yeah. And so to go from basically a mock execution
Right.
to sleep. And I'm shaking my head thinking I didn't hear that right. I must be hallucinating, right? Or maybe I'm already dead.
Right.
And he says it again and kind of like pushes me down into the ground. And it's really interesting. I still find this so fascinating that our bodies are so intelligent and so just meant they just want to protect us, right? Mm-hmm. And so my mind was on such overload in that moment that my body took over and I passed out.
I was going to say, that doesn't surprise me because I feel like you were exhausted. All of that, like mental and physical, it makes sense. It's like, because fear, it's so far past just being scared.
Yes.
It's like, that is such a...
I've never had another experience like that. Thank God. Where I've had my body respond in a way where it just completely 100% took over, in a way to take care of me. I mean, I think illness is, you know, like if you get a fever, you know what I mean? We know that that's our body's way of trying to take care of us, right? But this was so, it was so primal.
Yeah.
And so I passed out and I woke up a couple hours later, probably. And it was starting to get light out. And the realization of, oh my God, that was not just a horrific nightmare. This actually happened, met me as I'm opening my eyes and looking around and seeing like I'm laying in the dirt. I'm surrounded by armed men. I'm out in the middle of the desert. I am a hostage. Then I'm like, oh, okay. I have no idea what to do with this. What is this? What do they want? You know, I don't know who they are. Are they Al-Shabaab, which is an Islamic terrorist extremist group? If that's the case, then most likely they took us for ideological reasons. And then, you know, it's like being taken by ISIS. Like you're not going to survive that.
Yeah.
Or do they just want money? Like what do they want? And so that first day in captivity was surreal in the sense that, you know, there are just so many armed men. I mean, probably 30 to 50, like milling around. At one point, it was the rainy season, which means maybe it'll rain for like 15 minutes or something. And there was this deluge, like this downpour in the afternoon, and we had been given a mat, like it's like a plastic mat essentially to sit on, to lay on, and we had wrapped ourselves up in the mat to try to keep ourselves from getting too wet, but it didn't really work. We were drenched. But all I remember is once the rain stopped, unrolling the mat and then coming like literally face to face with the barrel of a machine gun that was trained on my head, because there was some guy sitting there and he was not happy for some reason that we had tried to protect ourselves from the rain. And so, you know, they're trying to establish like authority and control of your mind, of your body, all of it. And so the treatment at the very beginning was just, pretty rough. It was a lot of screaming at us, a lot of waving weapons in our face, a lot of threatening to shoot us right there. We would ask to talk to our organization. Like, you know, we need to make contact. We need to call a family member, like Shirley, you know, and it was probably 2 weeks before we were able to make any contact with anybody from our organization. But before then, we realized we were trying to figure out like who's the leader of this group. We moved from that particular camp. We didn't, you know, we figured they were going to take us to a house or to a compound or something, right? Shove us in a hole. We didn't know. But as it would turn out, they didn't have anywhere to take us. So their plan was to keep us outside for the entire experience. And so, you know, I maybe like a week or 10 days into it, we finally were able to establish some sort of like conversation with the guy who is what must have been like the leader at the time. His name was Abdi, or that's what he called himself. And we asked him point blank, I asked him, are you going to kill us? And he said, no. We just want money. We just want money. And that brought so much relief until I found out that their ransom demand was $45 million. And I'm thinking like,
there's no way.
like,
yeah.
Are you on crack? Like, yes, actually they were. But $45 million is like, how do you even know what $45 million is? Like, right. I can't even establish what that would be, how much that would be. And, you know, at the time, I think it's important to understand that there was a whole how do I want to say it? Like a whole rash of kidnappings or like ship takeovers that were happening. So piracy in the Indian Ocean was a thing. Okay, so it started out, and I'm no authority on this, but it basically started out as a way of taking back territory in the Indian Ocean because, you know, people in Somalia have very little means of making money. You know, this is a country where people live on less than $1 a day. Fishing was, for some regions, a big part of how they sustained their lives, and the waters were being overfished by commercial ships and commercial fishermen. So that's essentially how the whole piracy thing started.
Okay.
And so they took over, you know, yachts. They killed an American couple, and I'm talking about like pirates in general, right? Like not the group that held me. I don't know. But then if you're familiar with Captain Phillips, that movie, I don't know, is like 10 years ago, probably. They took over the Maersk, Alabama, which was a big container ship, an American captain who was held hostage and his crew for 4 days. And then SEAL Team 6 came in and rescued them. So this was like right around those times. And because the American military was the special forces were making their presence known, and Captain Phillips had been rescued, and there were a lot of casualties happening on water, then piracy was starting to move onto land. And so they were like 2 weeks probably before I was taken, 2 Spanish girls were taken out of Dadaab, which is the largest refugee camp in the world, or at the time it was. So what they were doing is it wasn't safe for them to be on water anymore. So they were moving onto land and kidnapping people on land. And essentially that's what was happening to me and Paul. And they were purely doing it for money. But what they didn't seem to understand is that we were not a container ship with millions of dollars worth of cargo and a whole crew. We were just 2 aid workers that at the time I felt like no one really knew about us, nor did anyone care outside of our family. So the fact that you're going to ask $45 million for us is like, you're crazy. Like, we're going to all sit here and rot because that's never going to happen.
Were they feeding you guys?
So the first couple of days, all I had was like a small package of cookies.
Okay.
And then eventually they started bringing us miniature tins of tuna fish. And so that was where my MacGyver skills kicked in. And I had this small powder bag that they let me take with me that had a few essentials in it. And that's the reel that went mega viral. Is I talked about how I ate tuna fish with a tampon applicator for like several weeks. It was a clean tampon. I hadn't used it. But eating tuna with your hands out of a miniature can is really hard. And then your hands are dirty and disgusting anyway. So I thought, let me use this tampon applicator as like like a little, you can suck tuna fish out of it. It was weird, but it worked, and I needed to eat something. And then eventually we started getting cans of pineapple, and we could eat that like at night. So I was eating maybe 400 calories most days, which is crazy low. I mean, it's something. So I have to give them that, but I lost 45 pounds throughout the course of the captivity. And this was a while ago, you know, and I'm almost 6 feet tall. So 45 pounds was pretty substantial. So, you know, you're hungry, and then your stomach starts shrinking, and then then were plagued with GI issues because sometimes they would boil up like a big pot of just plain spaghetti and everybody would eat out of it. And I'll be honest, like they're not eating much more than I am. It's not like they're sitting there eating more than I am. I think essentially we were living like a very basic Somali life, like sleeping out on the ground, being out in the elements. One of them even said that to me one time because I was mad about something. I think I wanted toilet paper or something. And they were like, stop your whining, shut up. Just take a nap and relax until you get out of here. You're basically living a normal Somali life. And I was just like, well, not exactly, but also I get your point. I kept waiting for them to take us somewhere, like to a house or something. And it just became increasingly more apparent that we were going to be outside the whole time. And so like that was rough. It's cold at night. It's windy. It does rain. There was nowhere to go. There was no escape. We're just subjected to the elements, to the sun. Your skin is cracking, it's bleeding, you're blistered, you're sunburnt. My eyes were swelling shut from the dirt. And then of course there's the hygiene. As a woman, questions I get often are like, well, what'd you do about your period? Well, I had something, I think I was pregnant actually when I got taken. And so, I think I had a miscarriage, in the first couple of weeks while I was out there. And then, that was horrific and painful and really scary, but also I was relieved because I like to be pregnant out there. I couldn't even imagine like how complicated that would make the situation. And then I didn't have a menstrual cycle again the entire time I was out there. So that wasn't really an issue. Yeah. I think between the stress and what was happening to my body and the lack of nutrition, my body, I think again, it was intelligent in protecting me. Mm-hmm. But then things like trying to, go to the bathroom, urinate, you're outside. I mean, I'm an outdoorsy girl, but after a while it can get real old real fast. And the lack of hygienic conditions, the lack of clean water to wash with. I mean, we would get like, sometimes you get like a bottle of water that had been purchased, and other times they would bring water that they brought in from whatever village we were staying outside of. And they would use the cans for diesel as well. So the water was laced with diesel, and that's what you're trying to wash with. And so, probably about 50 days into captivity, I started, exhibiting signs of a urinary tract infection. And that is painful and horrific. And so I knew what it was because I get them a lot. And I kept asking for medicine. I kept asking for a doctor, but they wouldn't bring me one. They would throw medicine at me, like they would throw me a box of pills, but I didn't know what they were. Yeah. And I was afraid to take them. And so, it just like kept piling on. I also have a thyroid condition. And so it was like a big deal. Like I need to get medication. Like if you want me to stay alive, like I kept trying to reason with them, right? Like I need this thyroid medication. If you want me to stay alive and you want to cash me in for the millions of dollars that you think I'm worth, then you need to somehow get this medication to me. Yeah. But it was, to no avail.
And how long did they have you guys in total?
93 days.
Mm. And that whole time you were outside?
Whole time we were outside. Yeah. The only time I was ever inside something was when we were being transported in the cars, which, felt like a break. Yeah. Even though you're being dragged all over the desert. And I mean, sometimes we would drive all night. So you're just like sitting there, like trying to, you're like nodding off. Yeah. You don't know where you're going. You don't know why. Are we running from something? Or should I be scared? Are you going to sell me to someone else? Are we finally being ransomed? Like I never knew what was happening, obviously. And it was just like one constant, I don't know what to call it other than to use like really crude language, but it was just like constant mind, You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and that's part of what torture is like, right? The Amnesty International used to define the word torture as being held against your will without an end being determined.
Yeah.
And I can truly attest to me that is my version of torture, because like I've never been incarcerated, but I can imagine if I compare it to being a hostage, like if you know that you're going to be out in 10 years, like that's a really long time, but you can count down, right? And you don't know if you're going to be held for 2 months or 2 years or 20 years. You don't know if you're going to survive it. Yeah. And so just like this waking up every morning, not knowing what the day holds and what the day is going to bring, is horrific in and of itself. And then on the flip side of that, being a hostage is just really boring. Like when you're not being terrorized and tortured, then you're just sitting there for 12 hours with nothing. You know, like I'm not one of those hostages where they brought me notebooks, you know, and a pen. Like I'm a writer. So if I'd had notebooks and a pen, I probably would have been happy. Like I could have, you know, recorded the whole experience and what I was thinking, but I literally was like sitting there playing tic-tac-toe with myself with little goat poop that was on the ground, like building things out of little sticks, like remembering everything that had ever happened to me in my life and doing life reviews, talking to my dead mother, like, you know, anything I could do to try to stay sane in the most insane circumstances. And that became my job. Like that was my work. And, you know, I don't know how long I could have held on and done that. 93 days was long enough, but 93 days is really not that long in the scope of being a hostage. There was a man, a German American, taken 2 weeks before I was rescued, and he was held for like 969 days. Because these situations are not simple. They are not easy to negotiate. And it's just impossible. It really feels impossible.
Okay, so his name was Paul, right? So how is he reacting through all of this? Like, was he remaining pretty calm?
Yeah, I would say so. Again, he's like older and wiser. However, on somewhere around day 27, he confesses that actually there was a direct kidnapping threat on the organization. There was some buzz.
Prior to you going?
Yes. So when I called and said, hey, I don't feel good about this, can we change the format of this training? I don't want to come down there. And he basically, you know, forcefully recommended that I come down. He had information that I didn't have, and he didn't share it with me. And it turns out that actually the regional security advisor who gave me permission to go and told me that I was good to go, all was ready, and my supervisor, who is based in Nairobi as well, had been informed about this kidnapping threat, and no one had mentioned it to me. And so I was like, wow, okay. Well, I hope you feel better now.
Why even put themselves or you in that situation?
They didn't consider it a viable threat.
Okay. So
I'm not sure. They thought it was a rumor.
Okay.
But what I said, you know, when I got out on the other side of this and went to debrief with them in a place like Somalia, where, you know, I mean, there's no real like government system. The infrastructure is very, very shaky. Like a kidnapping threat is always viable. Like you can't just, I mean, I think
brush under the rug.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you can't just be like, oh, it's a rumor.
Right.
And I mean, they had nothing to say. Mm-hmm. And also, you know, with Paul like telling me that like a third of the way into the kidnapping experience, I'm like, why bother? Other than he needed to get that off his chest, right? And so then what am I supposed to do with that? Because you're quite possibly the last person I'm ever going to talk to in my life. I need you right now to stay sane. and to, you know, protect me in some ways. That just felt like a really selfish time I mean, the whole thing was selfish.
So were you and him together the whole time?
No, we weren't. We were separated for long periods of time. But then oftentimes we were in the same camp, if you will, but just not allowed to like interact with each other. And then other times they'd let us talk to each other for an hour, or maybe we could like share the mat for the night, or, you know, but then other times they would come over and pull him up and drag him away and then go fire off rounds of ammo and then come back and say, oh, we shot him. And you're like, okay. Like,
so they would say that to try to scare
and
you.
they would do that back and forth. Or they would say that they sold me to Al-Shabaab and I wasn't ever coming back. And then they put me in a different camp for a couple of days or whatever. I mean, it was just constantly like trying to.
Like a mental game.
Totally.
Did they ever beat you guys?
I think his treatment was worse than mine, probably because I'm a woman. I wouldn't say I got beat up, but they were not nice to me. You know,
like they were dragging
aggressive.
You guys.
Yes, I always had this like fear that they were going to drag me across the camp by my hair. I don't know why, other than that's just like something I was afraid of. You know, they'd knock you down, they'd hit you with the gun, like the butt of the gun in the shoulder. I did my best to just stay submissive, to look at the ground, to obey orders. You know, I just be as like docile and grateful for anything. I mean, it was like very against my personality.
Yeah.
But you know, you're trying to stay alive, right?
Survival.
And there were times when I think Paul would get riled because you're being degraded constantly.
Right.
And so
you're treated like trash.
Yeah.
Like you're worth nothing.
You're not, it's not that you're worth nothing. It's that you're only a commodity. So your humanity is completely, cast aside. I felt like more like an animal, you know, there was one point where they just drove us into the center of a village and rolled the windows down, and all the villagers came and stared at us and looked in the windows as if we were like zoo animals. It was so bizarre.
Yeah.
I don't know if maybe they'd never seen like a Caucasian person before or what it was, or it was just like, oh,
Look
here's the hostages,
yeah,
right? I think it was kind of like that. And so it was stuff like that any way that they could make you feel dehumanized. I think that was the tactic.
And then you said the first form of communication that you had with, I guess, any type of help was how many days in? Like 10 days?
I think so, something like that.
And was that just like the first discussion of kind of a negotiation type of thing?
We weren't involved in any of the negotiations. So that was just a proof of life call. So, and we had no idea, right? Like we didn't know who we would be talking to. They drove us deep out into the desert in the middle of the night. They put us on a satellite phone. They called a number that they had. I have no idea how they got that number. And then the person who answered the phone, well, actually first they wanted us to call a family member. So I called my dad because I had his phone number memorized. I didn't have my husband's phone number memorized because he had all these different phone numbers from working in different countries. So I called my dad and his phone was disconnected. And I thought, okay. And so Paul calls his wife and her phone's disconnected. And then I think I called my sister next because I'd had her number memorized and her phone was disconnected. And I'm thinking, what the hell? Like, what is going on? Like, why would they have their phones disconnected? Like, I'm like, don't they know that we're going to be calling? Like, and then exactly. And Paul's like, no, they did this on purpose. I bet they did this so that no one can reach family to, because that's going to make everything messy because you got two people here, two entities who are also represented by an organization. So when we couldn't get through to family, they said, oh, we have a phone number to call. So they called this number and there's a guy named Mohammed on the other end of the line that picks up and he says he's the representative for DDG for the organization. And then he proceeds to ask us a list of security questions so that we can like prove our identity, because they want to make sure that we are still alive and that we are, you know, it's a proof of life call. So, you know, the security questions are things like, you know, like when you're logging into your bank information, like what's your mother's maiden name? What are I have an elephant tattoo on my back, like identifying features and things like that. And so I felt very disoriented because I'm like, who's Muhammad? I don't know any Muhammads. Like who, you know, and then come to understand that we knew our organization had kidnapping and ransom insurance, which was, you know, a source of peace, I guess, in some ways, but also insurance. Like, you know, like that's not going to move fast. And so I would learn later that they had deployed professional hostage negotiators. And so the person on the other end of the line was someone that they were using as a spokesperson. But they were actually the ones who were negotiating the ransom demand, and not family, which we're incredibly lucky that our families didn't have to go through something like that, because you know, there aren't a lot of us, but there are some former hostages that I'm friends with, and to hear like what their families have gone through is horrific.
I'm sure it's terrifying.
Right. For you know, for your elderly parent to be on the other end of the line.
And just even for them not to have an answer of like, are they coming home?
Right. Well, or to be in charge of like negotiating figures, right? So like the organization countered that $45 million ransom demand at $20,000.
And what happened?
Nothing. A lot of nothing.
The negotiations went on from like around day 10 till when they released you.
Right.
And what did they settle at?
Well, they didn't release us.
Okay.
So they didn't settle. I believe the negotiations had gone down to about $4 million is where they were at when January 25th rolled around. We'd had 6 proof of life calls at that point, and had to record a proof of life video, which was totally bizarre to like stand in front of a video camera. You know, like you see these things on TV and you're like, how can this actually be happening to me? Like, how is this my life?
Right.
So weird. And to think that maybe that's the last time your family's going to see you alive, like slashed up all over the TV, and, you know, you being ordered to relay a message that you don't want to relay. And so like fast forward to like day maybe January 16th, 10 days before I get out, we have our last proof of life call. I didn't know it was our last one, but I had gotten really sick. I had that UTI was moving into a kidney infection, and I knew it was because I'd had one the year before, and I had been hospitalized for a week. And so I knew what was happening to my body. And I knew that if I didn't get like medication, I needed an IV, I needed to be like in a hospital setting within the next 2 weeks, I was most likely going to die of sepsis while I was out there. Yeah. And so I said to the family communicator, and I'm like a direct person, but I'm not confrontational. And so, I was like, I mean, you know, I'm desperate. And I just remember saying to her, because Muhammad had disappeared and now we had a new family communicator named Alex. And I said to her, like, if you guys don't get me out of here and do something now, I'm going to die out here and it's going to be all your fault. This will have happened because of you guys. And so they take the phone away from me. I go back to camp. 10 days goes on. I'm becoming increasingly weaker. I'm like really struggling. I can hardly walk at this point. Mm-hmm. I have a fever. I'm in a lot of pain. And I go to bed that night. This is January 25th, going into the 24th, going into the 25th of 2012. And going to bed, I use that term loosely. Like I laid out on my mat in the middle of a field, you know. Yeah. I have one blanket. I wrap myself up on my blanket, and there's the pirate on my left. There are 9 guys on the ground that night, and Paul is on the other side of the camp because we weren't allowed to talk to each other for whatever reason for that period of time. And I go to sleep around 6 because the sun goes down at 6. who knows what time. It's not like I have a watch or anything. And I wake up a couple hours later with the need to be sick. And so I kind of like pull myself up off my mat and say the word toilet, because that's how we asked for permission to leave the mat. That was the only word that they understood, I guess. And the only time I was allowed to leave the mat was to go to the toilet, which is just to go use a bush. And everybody was completely passed out. Like some of them are snoring, like they're completely passed out, which was weird because there was always one who was like keeping watch over the camp at night, and they would rotate and they would take shifts, but they were all passed out. And I remember thinking like, oh, if ever there was a night to try to escape, it would be now. Right. But I'm too weak. I have no idea where I'm at. There's no way I'm going to try to escape now. And no one wakes up, and I'm afraid that they're going to wake up and find me gone. And then like, I was always afraid that I was going to be punished. Right. And so I didn't want them to think that I tried to escape. So I had this small, like little pen light, like flashlight that they'd given me. So I started flashing it, and I go to the nearest bush. I do what I need to do. I come back to my mat, and I wrap myself up in my blanket. And then like literally 30 seconds goes by, and the pirate who's like sleeping on my left, he wakes up, and I can't see him. It's really dark. But I can tell, like, you know how you can feel somebody's like terrified or they're scared? I can feel something's going on. And he's standing up and holding his weapon, and he's whisper screaming at all the other guys around the camp, like basically in Somali, wake up, wake up, wake up. And then like all of a sudden the night just erupts into automatic gunfire, and like there are bullets whizzing over my head. And I'm thinking, oh my God, like I'm really not going to survive. Like I'm going to die tonight. Once again, I'm back in a place where I think I'm going to be shot. Maybe it's going to be execution style. Maybe I'm just going to get caught in the crossfire. Maybe this is another group that has come to take us, because that was always a threat. Like we have to, they needed to stay vigilant because there could be other pirate groups who wanted, whatever. And so I'm just thinking like, I think kind of like this attitude of like, God damn it. I've like worked so hard to survive to this point, and I'm so sick, and it's like better the devil, and I'm just I'm not going to survive. I'm not going to make it through this. And I'm hearing just like the most horrific sounds. Like these guys are shooting their guns. They're getting hit. I'm seeing like bullets. I can see like flashes of light, and I put a blanket over my face. I'm trying to make myself as invisible as possible, right? I'm trying to hide. I'm trying to get low, stay low to the ground. I don't want to get up because I don't want to get shot. I don't want to try to take off running or anything. I'm just going to stay here, and hopefully they don't find me, which is like not a great plan. But suddenly I feel hands on my ankles and on my shoulders, and somebody's trying to pull the blanket away from me. And I have my hands in front of me, and I'm trying to protect myself. I'm trying to hide behind my hands like this. And I'm just like, oh God, like all I can say over and over again is, oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God. I don't know if I'm praying. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm just like, I'm so terrified. And I can't see anybody, but I hear there's somebody here on my right side, and it's a young man-ish, and he has an American accent, and he knows my name, and he says, Jessica, it's okay. We're the American military. You're safe now. We're going to take you home. And I can't like really compute. Like I'm just like overtaken by shock, and I start shaking, and I'm just like convulsing. I'm shaking so much. And all I can say over and over again is, wait a second, you're American? You're American? Like, I don't understand. You're American? And he says like, we've been watching you for a very long time. We know how sick you've been. And I can't like, like my mind is just like all over the place, and I can't make it make sense. And he has medicine, he has antibiotics, and he has like a clean bottle of water, and he gives them to me. He's like, I think like, here's the medication that you need. And I'm just like starting to look around, and then I'm seeing like I am surrounded by soldiers. And I'm thinking, oh my God, like, what is this? What is happening right now? And there's another soldier who's like standing at my feet, and he says, do you know where your shoes are? And I have no idea. Like, I no awareness of anything. And cause like walking through the desert in the dark is like, you can't do that with no shoes on. And I'm super sick, so it's hard for me to walk anyway. But he's like, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pick you up. I'm going to put you over my shoulder, and I'm just going to carry you out. And I'm like, okay. And so he does just that. And I just remember having this very like clear thought of, as he's like running across the desert with me over his shoulder, thinking like, I'm a school teacher from Ohio. How is this my life right now? Like, how can this
be? Like, how did I get here?
How did I get here? And am I alive? Like, I don't, is this one of those things where I'm dreaming it, or did I die
dead this whole time?
Like, have I been dead? Like, it is such a weird alternate reality. I don't know what's real and what's not, until he puts me on the edge of camp. And there's like lights around, and I'm starting to kind of like, place things. And my first questions, where's Paul? Is he safe? Did he make it out? Or, did he get shot? Like, and he's sitting there, and he leans over to me and he says, do you know who these guys are? And I'm like, no, like, I don't know what's happening. And he says, this is SEAL Team 6. These are the guys that got Osama bin Laden last year. And I'm just like what? Like, I don't understand how, like, I can't compute it. I can't figure out, like, how did they know where, like, I don't understand any of this. I have no military background. I have no frame of reference for any of this. And it wouldn't really be until like the helos came in and like lifted off, until we were like probably 10,000 feet up in the air, that I was like, did I actually survive this? Mm-hmm. Am I alive? Did I make it out alive? And then the helicopters took us to Galkayo airstrip, to their airport, and put us on a plane. And it was explained that they were going to take us to Djibouti, to a neighboring country, to a military base where we would receive medical care, because they had a hospital facility there. And I think it wasn't until we like landed in Djibouti and we were escorted off the plane. I just remember getting in a minivan and sitting next to Paul, and the sun had come up. We'd been up all night. We'd just been through this extraordinarily strange rescue. And I started to cry, not weep, just silently, tears streaming down my face. And I looked at Paul and I said, we made it. We lived. And then it would become like, just in many ways an extraordinary experience, but in many ways a very difficult, hard experience in the aftermath of all of that.
Well, I think too, even if you might have had moments that were scarier than others, mm-hmm. That was 93 days. Mm-hmm. That whole time, your body is living in like constant fight or flight.
Absolutely.
You are in constant survival mode. Yes. So I'm sure the come down of that, on top of all the trauma, all the fear, all the nightmares, or whatever else, compiled.
Right. The deprivation.
Right.
Sleep deprivation, just the exposure to the elements. Yeah. I mean, it took me a decade.
I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was right that in those first moments mm-hmm. of the actual abduction, like it changed everything about my life. It changed me on a cellular level. Like, I mean, I'm not a scientist, so I can't prove that it changed my DNA, but it felt like it certainly changed the trajectory of my life.
100%.
Fundamentally.
Question, did they tell you, or do you know how, when they came to rescue you and were able to take you back to a safe area, how far that was? Like how long or far they had to drive?
Say that again.
Like where you were right before the rescue happened, when they put you in the van to take you back, how long was it to safety? Like how long of a drive?
So they put us in a helicopter first, lifted us out of the desert, took us to Galkai. We were in outside of a town called Adado.
So they had to fly you out of there.
They
You were like
flew
really
us out on a medical helicopter where we received like
and
like
how did
IVs.
they find where you guys were?
Well, I mean, this is so far above my like pay grade that I don't understand. But they had sights on us the whole time. I think my understanding is that maybe they lost us for about a week.
Okay.
But technology, I think drones, there are lots of ways that they do things. But the other thing that I think is interesting, Paul would be, in those moments where you're really frustrated, right? And he'd be like, send in the Marines. And I would just, that would like piss me off. I hated it when he said something like that. First of all, because I felt like the whole thing was his fault. And why should the American military come in and rescue him?
Right.
So unbeknownst to me. But I would also be like, Paul, like you're Danish. There are 5 million people in your country. Like I'm American. There are 380 million people in my country. Like America has much bigger fish to fry and bigger concerns, right? They don't care about 2 aid workers who are here who got into trouble because their organization sent them into a dodgy place and we were just following orders, which is like a really Debbie Downer way of looking at things. But, times were tough. Yeah. And I was wrong. Actually, what is extraordinary and, I don't talk about politics or anything in this format, but I will say what is extraordinary about belonging to a country like America is that I in that point in time, I did matter. And the president at the time was Barack Obama, and he was being briefed like on a daily basis about the American hostage that was being held in Somalia. And if anything, that is like such an extraordinary concept to try to, to grapple with and to try to understand really is that we all do matter. And however you want to look at it existentially, for me, it didn't matter. Nothing mattered other than, bringing me home alive as an American citizen. And that has been reiterated to me time and time again. This is what we train for. This is what we're waiting for. It was our greatest honor and duty because I felt so guilty for so long, like what if something, what if one of the SEALs had been shot? What if they had died? They have families at home. Like, I felt so responsible for so long. And it has always been messaged to me like, no, you were doing your job. Yeah.
And so were they.
And it was a team effort.
Did they kill all of those guys?
All 9 of them died.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's a hard thing for me to contemplate. I don't have like Stockholm syndrome, but I mean, I was there to be a humanitarian aid worker, and I think that things get gray really fast. Things just aren't black and white. And
and that's right. And I think that shows your character though, because it shows that and that's the thing is you worked over in places like that for so long that it's even just seeing that child, how early they're born into it. Obviously it's horrific what's being done to other people, but it's almost like they're born into this. Like that is their life. That's what they know. That's kind of their...
Well, and also they're born into poverty. This is why I do believe in humanitarian aid and international development. That like, if you don't do to whom much is given, much is required. If you don't help in some ways to help people build systems and infrastructures and provide education and give them opportunities to make a better life, then they're going to resort to crime because at the end of the day, we all just want to survive. Like that's just a fundamental human response. And so for, they would say to me, one of the guys that died that night, I remember him saying to me, we called him Cook because he was the one who was like, when there was spaghetti noodles, he would cook the spaghetti noodles. But he said to me in broken English, my babies are hungry and that's why you're here. My babies need to eat. I would hope that I would have the moral compass not to do something like that and to resort to crime. And I'm not excusing it in any way, but I am saying that I think, as much as I can from my place of privilege, and I am incredibly privileged, I understand. And so like my forgiveness journey hasn't actually ever been about them. It's been about my organization and it's been about Paul. And it's been about their lack of duty of care.
100%.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like, and that makes a lot of sense though, because, going into these different countries and these situations, it's kind of just a thing that everybody knows there's a risk.
Sure.
So I think that if it happens, it's like, how can you blame that when you had that idea? It's not like you're just walking out on the streets outside and someone's doing it to you that, you're part of the same country. And it's a very different circumstance. And I think it is 100% a slap in the face because you had that gut feeling and you put your trust into them and you were going to help them. And that's what the result was. And while, yes, thank God you survived it, you did have to deal with over a decade of healing and getting through that and trying to even just understand it and come down from it. And that changes your life.
Yes.
In every way.
Yes.
And I don't even think, like, there's so much more to the situation than just, oh, this happened to her, she's out alive, that's it. It doesn't end there.
No.
And I think, that makes total sense.
Yeah. And I mean, that's why I'm so passionate about talking about this survival journey afterwards. Like it's one thing to survive the trauma, right?
Yeah.
And that's extraordinary. And some of our traumas last for years. Some of them last for 20 minutes, but trauma's trauma. But it's the aftermath that is so grueling.
It rewires the brain.
Yes.
It literally does.
It absolutely does. The body keeps the score, right? And it's day in and day out of choosing to try to move forward when you haven't slept all night because you've had PTSD dreams or you were triggered by a certain smell or food. And I mean, you name it. Like I've hidden in the back of my closet because something triggered me and I had a total outburst and my husband's just standing there looking and I've got 2 little kids, I can't have loud music in the car still because they used to drive us around blaring music in the desert. And so when my kids were really little and there'd be screaming in the back of the car and the music was loud, I would have panic attacks, all of that stuff. You don't ever get over it.
Right. It's always that, even if you get better at dealing with it and handling it, it's always there. It puts you right back there.
Totally. I can be back there in a second.
Right.
And someone said to me yesterday, I was having lunch with a friend and another person, and she said, how did she say it? She said, it's a lot to go back and live in that space again. And I'm like, you know what? That's exactly what PTSD is. It's constantly, and it gets less and less, but it's about this experience of living in that space again against your will, which is particularly triggering to trauma survivors, but especially if you've been held hostage against your will, you feel almost like you're being held hostage by your own mind because you're not in control of anything.
Right.
Again. And again and again and again. And I guess the esoteric kind of message of that is that we're really not in control. But that can get really wonky and messed up too as you're trying to move through, your spiritual evolution from all of this. Oh my God, it's so much work. And I understand why people don't do it because it's exhausting.
It is. And it takes a lot of commitment day in and day out, and I think that I say this all the time too. It's one of those things that you'll have days where you're like, man, I'm doing good today. And then you could have days where you feel like you are 10 steps backwards again.
100%. Even now.
Yeah.
And it's been, 13 years for me.
Right. So when you got out, so you're at the time, were you guys married already?
We'd been married for about a year and a half.
And you guys were living where?
So we were based in Hargeisa, Somalia, Somaliland, but we had an apartment in Nairobi, and Nairobi felt like home. So I don't know how this happened other than, obviously I know how it happened, but just a miracle. I find out about a month after the rescue that I'm pregnant.
Wow.
And I, against all odds, like how is that even possible?
Right.
I mean, my body is so malnourished. I haven't had a menstrual cycle. Like what?
Yeah. You would think if anything, your body would reject it and be like, not now, lady.
What?
Right.
And also I was like, can I not get a break?
Yeah.
Please.
Right.
Like,
My body needs to rest.
I'm sick. Like
Yeah.
I threw up for 8 months and I didn't think my body would hold on to the pregnancy.
Right.
But it did. And, then that threw me into like a whole other like identity crisis of like motherhood in the throes of like dealing with trauma and healing and PTSD and postpartum anxiety and depression. It's just like so hard.
Well, I'm
it
sure
was so
too,
hard.
I could even see how that would, when you do have kids, how all of that anxiety would trickle down into that, because then you have the reality set in of, wow, this stuff isn't just in movies. Like this could happen.
Right.
Then next,
what if something happens to my kids?
Yeah.
Like what?
It opens up a whole nother door of just
paranoia and phobias and all of it. And so I had my son in Nairobi because that was home, and that was like, I know it sounds weird to people, but I mean, I lived in Africa for almost 10 years at that point. Like that was, I knew the medical system. I had my doctors, like my friends were there,
And what did your husband say when you got back? Like what was going through his mind when all of this happened?
Oh my God. He was just, you're elated, right? Like to have the person that you love the most in the world come back to you, because it could have been so bad.
And how far in did he find out that you had been kidnapped?
Oh, he knew from like the first hour, because
really?
We had staff that witnessed the whole thing. And it turns out, to your earlier question, it was an inside job. So Abdurizak, that security advisor that I was talking about, that I felt so sorry for when he got pulled out of the car and hit in the head. Well, he's the one who set it all up.
Wow.
Yeah. He sold us for $100,000 that he never got, because they never got the ransom. They never got paid because of SEAL Team 6.
That is wild. So you guys lived there. You had your baby there.
And we lived there for about 6 months. But my anxiety, like it was starting to become like, talk about intrusive thoughts, man. Like I kept thinking, they're going to find me.
Yeah.
They're going to come and take my baby. They're going to kill my baby. They're going to kidnap my baby.
It's
like
scary.
I couldn't sleep. Like I was starting to become like psychosis, like postpartum psychosis. The medications weren't helping. My therapist wasn't helping. So we decided it's time to go back to the States. Again, my husband had never lived in the US. He's Swedish.
Wow. Okay.
So we sold everything we had. We left everything we knew together as a couple. I've got this baby. I've got this husband. I've got all this trauma, and I land in DC, and have to then figure out how to rebuild my life.
Yeah.
Which I think was actually the hardest part of all of us.
I'm sure. And what was the recovering and healing journey for you? Like, I know, I'm sure in the beginning, like you said, it was just a spiral. But at what point do you think that you started to kind of grasp it and be like, okay, now we're on the up, like I'm on my healing journey?
I think the first year or two was just a blur. A lot of that has to do with motherhood. We also we decided to start exploring options. This was a very high profile media event. So when it happened, my dad and my sister were barricaded in their houses by reporters.
They're all in Ohio.
No, they live in Virginia now.
Okay.
And they lived in Virginia. My sister lived in Pennsylvania when this happened, but they were just being hounded by reporters and stuff. So it was a big deal, especially because it was publicized that President Obama called my dad personally to let him know that I had survived and I'd been rescued. And so it was big deal in the media. And but I didn't want to, I didn't know anything about this while I was out there. It's kind of like being in a coma. You come back, you don't know if your family members are still alive. Like, you don't know, like, is my grandmother still alive?
Last time you called, all the things are disconnected. So you're like,
exactly. I don't know what's.
Yeah, and I think naturally your brain goes to the worst. Because you're like, if this could happen to me, I can only imagine.
Sure. Exactly. Right. And so I just didn't want to talk about it. Like, I talked about it with my family, but I certainly wasn't going to like talk to Diane Sawyer or whoever else was calling. I'm not, I don't want to do that. And then I woke up about 6 months later one morning and I thought, we should probably write all of this down because we have our son coming. Once he comes and gets here, we're going to be busy and we're going to forget about what happened and what we've been through. And so I want to write this down for him. And also I know that there are thousands of people who helped get me out of here. And it's true. It's not hundreds. It's thousands of people who were involved in getting me out. I'll never be able to say thank you to all of them. So I want to have an account of what happened so that they know my side of the story. So, we just started kind of like, what's the word? Like, detached from the outcome, I guess, of like what could happen, but maybe we should see if anybody's interested in this story. Maybe we should write a book or whatever. And so that took on a life of its own, and you end up writing a book. It becomes a New York Times bestseller because of the association with SEAL Team 6. And then there's this book tour. So now I'm like, okay, thrown into the spotlight, not necessarily wanting to. Like, this was also before social media was as big as it is now. So like, I'm a teacher. Like, I don't know how to do this. Like, I don't need to be in the spotlight. I just wanted to write this book so that I had the memories so that my son knows what we all survived and how he came into the world. But it just kept taking on a life of its own. And so I think that in some ways really held me back from beginning my healing journey because I was just talking about it all the time.
Right.
And talking and reliving it and reliving it and reliving it, going back to live in that place. And it was so fresh. And
it's a whole nother, it's like, then you go from survival to adrenaline in a way. Because then it's like you're thrown
all
into
the
this,
time. And then you have like, then I had triggers, right? Like I had these weird coping mechanisms. Like if I would go speak and go tell the story at like a conference or something, for instance, then I would come back to my hotel room and I would binge eat. Because something about that whole being starved, right, would cause me to like, that was my coping mechanism. And some like unhealthy habits definitely ensued. Like my husband caught me like hiding food, I would like hide food in the car, like under the seats and stuff, like do weird stuff, that because I would like, food was a real big thing because I didn't have it. And so, had to work through that. Finally landed in DC, found a place to live, found a therapist who was a godsend. Like, thank God for therapists. I was in such crisis that I was seeing her twice a week. And she really, really helped me navigate those early years. And at one point I had my daughter, then 2 years later, and I think finally settling into like, okay, this new phase of my life. I'm in my 30s now. Like, I've got 2 kids. I think I should go back to teaching. And so I think that was an attempt to hide, not heal. So I did go back to teaching and it was great and it was awesome. But then inevitably people will find out what you've been through. I'd have kids come up and say like, my mom was at the library and there was a book there and you're on the cover. And I'd be like, nope, that wasn't me. That you must be wrong. Like, I don't know who that was. It became clear to me that because this trauma had so fundamentally changed me, that I no longer fit into the life and the profession, the roles that I had before. So I needed to figure out what to do now. And that was really hard and really scary. reinvention takes a lot of work.
You're basically creating a new identity.
Yes.
And not really by choice necessarily.
No. And not really even getting to choose that identity and what you want it, to be, because it's really weighed down by those past experiences.
Yeah.
And I think the number one thing I would say to anyone who's surviving trauma or is moving into that space of survival is you just have to give it time.
I know. Yep.
And it's like the worst thing to say to people.
I know. I was thinking that something along the lines the other day. I was like, whenever somebody's struggling, the worst thing and that you want to hear, the thing to say is time, but time is the only thing. There's nothing you can actually do.
There's no hack.
No.
Therapy helps for sure.
There's tools.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm extraordinarily lucky because I had support.
Right.
And I had, resources to go to therapy and stuff. But one of the most valuable things I've had the luxury of giving to myself has been time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really only been in the last couple of years where I feel like I've finally gotten to a place where it came out of nowhere, and it was very like, I don't know. I guess I figured there would be some fanfare that came with feeling healed or something, but it's very quiet and very insignificant. And I was just at my computer one day at my desk in my office, and somebody had written me an email, and they were expressing sympathy that I had been through what I'd been through. And I just wrote, I wasn't really thinking. I just said, "Thank you. I appreciate that, but it's okay because I'm at peace now." And I looked at it and I read it again, and I sat back in my chair and I thought, I'm at peace now with everything. Well, how about that? That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought, this must be what healing feels like.
Right.
I'm not angry anymore. Like I used to just seethe with anger at Paul, at the organization, at my life being ripped apart. Like the worst part about all of it, I think, was that my life changed. Like I had to leave Africa. I had to leave my work and my job that I felt so called and committed to. Like all of those things I had, whether it was right or not, whether I had made a mistake, but like that is how I define myself and how I identified myself. And then to lose all of that was so painful. There was so much grief, and to finally be able to step back and say, I don't think I'm grieving anymore.
Right.
That felt like, actually, that's what survival felt like to me. Yeah.
Have you talked to Paul at all since?
Yeah, we did. We tried to stay in contact. We actually had a mediation, like a mediator come and work with us. And like, it was after my son was born. So it would have been like a year after everything happened. And I just wanted him to say, I'm sorry. I just wanted him to take some responsibility, and he wouldn't, and the organization wouldn't. And so I just there was nowhere for me to go from there. Right. There's nothing nothing I can do. And so like, on the anniversary of the kidnapping and the rescue, we would email each other for a while. And I was really struggling, and he just like went on and went back to work.
And it's hard too, because one of those, I think we sometimes tell ourselves that, and it feels like what would help us heal is getting closure. Mm-hmm. And I think by getting those apologies and having those people take responsibility, it might make you feel better.
Yeah.
But we have no control of other people and what they do. And I think it might lengthen the journey a little bit, because we have to find that closure on our own.
Yes.
And it's not as easy as just somebody being like, I knew, and I'm sorry, and I should have let you trust your gut.
And I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not even sure that's what I needed.
Probably not.
You know what I mean?
But it would feel good in that moment. But does it make a big difference in your journey?
I don't know.
Who knows?
Who knows?
Maybe not. But I think it might suck a little bit more not getting that, but being able to do the healing and the work within yourself, I think it's a little bit more sustainable and long term.
Right. Well, and to choose that in
Yeah.
spite of the fact
Anger.
that, you know,
Yeah,
I'm
you could
never
stay
gonna.
angry. Yeah. And some people do. That's the sad
Yeah.
part is in trauma, some people, they don't want to put in the work
Why do you think that is?
because it's hard.
Yeah.
You know, like, I mean, even if you haven't been through anything, to show up and work on yourself and be willing to recognize and take accountability for what needs to change, how you're feeling, it's very overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it's easier to just stay angry and stay bitter and go the route that I think naturally when something happens to you, your body just wants to shut down.
Yeah.
I think it's harder and more difficult to wake up every day and face those demons and work through them.
Yeah.
You have to be, in my opinion, I think you have to be a certain type of person, have a very certain type of motivation, and you have to want to get through it. You have to want to be better. No one can convince that of you. And then there's some people like Paul, and this is, maybe I'm putting words in his mouth, I don't know, but or assuming. But there's people like that too that maybe he really feels like he's okay and kind of just keeps it pushing. And on an outside perspective, it's like, how does he just keep going? And then I feel like my life is crumbling. But maybe he just hasn't faced it yet.
Right.
You know,
well, and I am of the
in.
mindset that it's going to come and get you at some point. Like,
oh yeah,
yeah, it will. Like it'll come.
It will always come.
You can't outrun it.
No.
You know, and that's not my problem. Like that's his. So, and I have no idea. Maybe he has dealt with it.
Right.
Like I have no idea. We don't have any contact. But I think two things. I felt like I had a responsibility to heal because I think that again that there was this sense of duty that I had, you know, being a recipient of like a rescue operation like SEAL Team 6 in my country, investing so much in terms of like resources and money essentially, you know, like I'm like I have a duty to like be the best person I can be,
and
right?
And you got a child coming.
And then I have these kids.
Yeah.
If I'm not going to heal for myself, I have to heal from them,
Yep.
you know, because I had a tumultuous childhood. My mom, she had her demons that she didn't deal with and it affected me
100%.
And I guess in some ways I do feel kind of like I've broken some of those generational cycles. And it is the hardest work I have ever done. And I'm like, good Lord, no wonder I'm tired. But
right. But that is, and it is crazy that you found out you were pregnant a month later. Like that really was that's probably exactly what you needed.
And I can see that now in the moment.
It kind of makes you hold on.
Hard, and I was so scared, so scared. But I can see now that he was sent to save me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and he is such a special.
I mean,
they're both special, but I have two. He just turned 13.
Wow.
And now he's a teenager and not always very nice to me, but
it's the age.
Yeah. And then my daughter's almost 11, and I was thinking about it while I was driving here and how I'm so grateful that I got to live and I got to experience these human experiences because they have been extraordinary.
Absolutely. And I think too, you know, I say this a lot to people. I always feel bad. I'm like, I hope I'm not too repetitive in my episodes, but you know, there's so many different types of traumas. Yours is definitely a case that not many people experience and go through. But the aftermath of it and the fact that you are able to write about it and speak about it, it touches anyone else that's been through any type of trauma because everybody knows what it feels like to be in a rut or to have to fight to get out of one. You know, and that I think you can have any type of experience, some really, really scary and bad, some... And then everybody handles it differently too. So, but that I think is a whole nother aspect of it. And it's a whole nother aspect of how, you know, the journey can really just, I think for a while it can seem like, I can't believe this happened. And you can have that anger and it can feel like your life was uprooted. But then, and you had your fulfillment, you know, with your teaching and doing that then. And now it's like, this is your new fulfillment.
Right.
This is your new way of teaching.
Right.
And helping people.
Right. And I'm a big believer in like, I have a friend who said to me not too long ago, and I just think that this is the most incredible statement ever. He said, things don't always happen for a reason, but that doesn't mean we can't derive purpose from them.
Yep.
And that has been like my North Star. And so, yes, the fulfillment or purpose or whatever you want to call it is really like my hypothesis, I guess, in terms of like how we move forward as trauma survivors. I know that everybody you talk to on this podcast has been through something significant and extraordinary. And my belief is that the way we pull ourselves out of the depths of despair in that healing journey is to really find some sort of purpose to connect to, whether it's rescuing animals or talking about it or writing about it or, starting a school, whatever, or becoming a massage therapist, whatever it is. Like, it doesn't matter how big or how small, but you have to find something. You have to find a reason to get up in the morning.
Absolutely. And it's not easy.
Being human is hard.
Right. And I tell people all the time, I'm like, even if you're not doing any of that, but you're just willing to use your voice and speak and share and get vulnerable, it changes people's lives.
It does.
Like, you don't have to be a celebrity. You don't have to be anybody. It's just your story. It's your voice. And it can make people feel like I'm not alone. Yeah. Or if they could do it, I can do it. And that 100%. Is such a moving, incredible thing.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter where you came from. It just matters that you're using your voice. And that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to communicate.
Yeah.
We're supposed to help others. And we can heal each other without doing something extraordinary.
Yes.
It can be just talking.
Yes.
And being open and being kind. And I think it could be really, really simple. I think a lot of our world and society has lost sight of that, of how simple it is and how the smallest things can make the biggest difference, but they really can.
Well, I think we overcomplicate things
100%.
Because but also do we overcomplicate them to hide behind them, to use them as an excuse?
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
And you just laid it out very clearly. It's really not hard.
Right.
It's very simple. And that's what you're doing here. It's incredible.
I love it. And I love it because I get to learn.
Yeah.
And I get to give people the space. And, something else I say all the time too is I think social media has so many pros and cons.
It does.
And while it's entertaining and it's fun, it's also toxic and you can just get in this mind scroll of things. But, I always said if I could just, when I started this, I had a really small platform and I was like, if I could just give people a voice and take this small little thing I have and give it away and just I don't need it to be about me, just give it to people. And in the moment that sounded great, but in my mind I was like, is that really going to happen? Who knows? But the fact that this has turned into something, that people can just use it as an outlet to speak and to hear others and, to talk about their lives, to talk about where they are now and, share their books and share whatever they want. That is so fulfilling to me. And it makes me so grateful that I'm able to provide that space because it's not, I always say it's funny. It's like, I'm not really doing, people will be like, yes, you are doing much, but like, I'm not really doing that much. I'm just sitting here and I'm giving people that safe space to talk, which I know it's hard to find. And that is a lot, but at the same time, it's you guys and it's your vulnerability that creates the show. It makes it what it is, and that I'm so grateful for every single one of the people that have come on and that are willing to tell me, a stranger, and tell my audience. And I hope that if that's something that can keep continuing on because it gives so many people courage and strength.
Yeah, absolutely.
People that you don't even know,
Well, it's very generous of you. And it's not very common.
It's sad. So. It's great. That's something that I just can't wrap my head around. I feel like the world, and I hate to, because it sounds negative, but I think it's the reality of it is it feels like it only gets worse, unfortunately. Like it doesn't feel like it's going in a good direction.
Yeah.
But hopefully the more stories that people hear, the nicer people will become. That's what we can hope.
Right.
Okay, so you have your 2 books. Did you wrote both of these?
Yep.
Okay.
I did.
And is that what you're doing now full time? Is your writing and everything?
So I have a couple more books in between these that are anthologies, but I have a publishing company.
Okay.
And so
Amazing.
I started that about 5 years ago.
Wow.
So I get to teach. I continue to get to teach. And originally we just started it for women who'd survived something. So we publish memoir manifestos. You've been through something, now you know something, and you want to teach us something. And we started out by putting together these anthology experiences. So we bring together a cohort of 20 women. We teach them how to write. We teach them more about memoir writing, the process, all of that. And I think we're like on our 7th or 8th one. I mean, it's just been tremendous. So I wrote Impossible Odds with my husband, and we had a ghostwriter help us with some of the military pieces. That's the book that we wrote in 2013 that did really well. And so that's, typically the story that people want to read. It's an account. It's a nonfiction narrative. But what I have found to be really healing for me is community building, and to know that I'm not alone. And I really feel like sharing our stories, much to your point, through written word is not only healing through the act of writing about our trauma. I mean, there's science that backs up the healing effects on our bodies, like our physical bodies and our minds and our emotions, by writing about our trauma. So I'm a big believer and lean into that, but also just like that, building that camaraderie in that community so that we all know that we're not alone. I mean, I work with women every day who've been through far worse situations than I have, and they're still like, putting one foot in front of the other, and they're generously sharing their stories because they want to help other people. How to Survive Survival is a guide to those years in the aftermath of your trauma. It's all of the things that I've learned, and the skills and the tools that I've collected along my healing journey. And then I highlighted 20 other survivors and share their stories and what they've been through and how they're making meaningful contribution to the world. So, I spend a lot of time with words, and I spend a lot of time with survivors, and I am always blown away at the impact that it has on the survivor, and then the reader as well. And I just feel, I'm really privileged to get to do that.
That's amazing. And I feel like, even for you, hearing all these different stories, it can really, it can make you relate to somebody, and in such a similar but different way.
For sure.
Like the circumstances might be so different, but the ways that you feel and the aftermath and what you go through and the different thoughts, it's
very similar. Yes. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all human.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we all have our own ways of coping, but they're very, they're kind of standardized too.
Right.
Because that's how we're wired. So I just find it really inspiring to be around all of these women. We've just started an imprint for men as well. But mainly my audience is women. And that's really who I feel called to serve now in this capacity. And they inspire me every day.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I love that. And I love that, what you used to do has transformed into still teaching, but in a different capacity, in a different way. And I think too, there's nothing wrong. And it is, I think we always are going to grieve our old selves or our old lives, because I mean, that was a half, a quarter, whatever of your life, that's a huge chunk of it. And we all identify with certain things that we do all the time. And to let go of those things is terrifying. And it feels like we're losing ourselves. But I think in actuality, if you are able to shed that skin and step into this new identity and build something new, whether it's by choice or because of what you went through, I think that by being able to do that and being able to reinvent yourself and find yourself and, transform these things that you've gone through into something that can help people, I think that is going to teach you more about yourself than what you thought maybe you were supposed to do. It's like it almost becomes, like you said, like I'm at peace with it. Like that was one part of my life, and I learned so much and I was so fulfilled, but this is now. Yeah. And I think that's such an incredible thing, because not many people have the courage to do it. That's a very scary, scary place to be. And you, like I said before, I think you have to be a certain type of person with motivation, whether it's motivation for yourself or to help others, to be able to power through and actually build and create something and keep it going.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think at the end of the day, I just want to live.
Yeah.
And this is what living looks like, not just surviving.
Right. Well, you did incredible. And I'm so grateful that you came out here. And it's crazy to me that now you're so close.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it took a little while with traffic, but still, like, what are the odds?
I know, right?
But no, seriously, thank you so much. You did amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your story and coming here. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about? Anything else you wanted to share? Did you get it all?
I think so. I think that's all of it.
Good. You did amazing.